It's great to have this chance to be here to tell you about the work that my lab is commercializing in computational pharmacology. As Trung said, we've called this drug burden scoring, which is a term of our own invention. So let me start by telling you how it's done for the most part. I'm a psychiatrist. This project started in my clinic. My prescribing decisions are largely based on randomized controlled trial data. We take a group of patients, we split them in half get the drug, half get the placebo, and then we see who does better. Now, this is great, but it does have some limitations. Obviously, I'm sure you all know that it's incredibly expensive, but bigger picture, this is one trial, one agent, one outcome, and that's what we're looking for. And the timing here is spectacular, because about 10 days ago, a giant meta-analysis came out in The Lancet, which really makes my point for me. And it says that of the 10 or so completely reasonable first-line therapies for major depression, the most common thing I treat, all 10 of them are equally effective. And so when I have to choose among those 10 treatments, I'm doing it based on minimizing the bad stuff, not maximizing the good stuff. And these trials actually don't give me any guidance on how to do that. Or do they? So if you think about the data that we collect pre-market and then again post-market, it is majority bad stuff. What are the off-target effects, the side effects, the adverse events? Not that first 25 seconds of the direct-to-consumer ad where we tell you all the great reasons to take our medicine, but the last 5 seconds where we give you the litany of bad things. What we did in my lab was take all of those litany of bad things as captured in regulatory data sets and combine them with human expertise from providers at Mass General to build drug burden scores. So this is really a semi-supervised feature engineering paradigm. The 3 drug burden scores that we began with are bleeding, fall, and delirium. You can see them here. Conceptually, think of them as rulers that we can put to an individual medication or a list of medications. So why did we pick these 3? Delirium is a clinical interest of mine. It's an acute confusional state that costs billions in additional healthcare expenditure, mostly due to complicating inpatient admissions. Big JAMA article recently told us that falls are the second least researched leading cause of death in the United States, second only to gun death. Bleeding, well, that was appealing because we know exactly where you'd use it. You'd use it prior to elective surgery. So those were the 3 we started with, but there's no reason we're limited to those 3. In fact, today we're working on sedation and weight gain, 2 common drug burdens that I hear about in my clinic, and really we can do anything, presumably, with this methodology. So let me walk you through how it works. Our patients don't take 1 medication, and they don't take 4, what I've shown here. In fact, the average Partners patient who's hospitalized at Brigham or Mass General takes 8.5 medications. So this idea of 1 medication is a little bit misleading. Each of our patients' medications is prescribed for a reason, some benefit, and it also comes with some small amount of risk. Let's start with the bleeding example. Imagine these 4 medications each have their net benefit, their primary outcome, but also this little incremental risk of bleeding. And to be sure, it's very small. But on the margin, it can actually add up to something which is not trivial. Imagine just summing across this entire list of medications. And you can imagine that you actually get to a reasonably large risk of bleeding. The same concept applies for the other 2 and any other burden scores we might develop. So it's not just that this is a ruler that we can take to an individual prescribed ingredient, it's that it's a ruler we can take to an entire medication list. And so instead of an ingredient or provider-centric view of the world, this really captures that idea that our patients are taking, again, 8 or 9 medications on average. So we started with fall. This is a paper that we published in British Medical Journal using the electronic health records data from Partners. What you're looking at here is a demonstration that we can risk stratify using our fall burden score in terms of risk for fall, medically consequential fall. We then replicated this in a completely independent claims data set. So moving from health records data in the initial publication over to claims data in the second publication. Different journal preferences here, so different axes, but the big picture is the same. We're able to stratify for fall risk using this fall burden score. So initial publication, exciting description of method in that BMJ paper, subsequent replication in a state representative claims database. Having done this, we were reasonably convinced we had something real, and we wanted to commercialize it. And so we brought together two threads of investigation from my lab, the drug burden thread we've been talking about, and a pharmacovigilance, pharmacogenetics story. So if you think about how medications work, particularly psychiatric medications, they're actually eliminated through a set of enzymes in your liver. Those enzymes function differently from person to person, and that difference in function is something that can be predicted from your genetic code. So if we take those two threads and bring them together, we have our drug burden scoring that we believe works, and we have the capacity to customize it using your genetic code to the individual patient. Something like this. Given your medications and your genetic code, we think that you're at increased risk of bleeding, decreased risk of fall, increased risk of delirium, for the sake of argument. And this was really exciting because it was obvious how we would commercialize this. We partnered with companies who were doing this pharmacogenetic testing commercially. A physician orders that test. The specimen in the medication list is sent to the company. The company returns to us the genetic result and the medication list. We then return a report of the sort I just walked you through back to the testing company, who integrates that into their final result to the provider to guide decision making. This was appealing for many reasons, but one of the ones I want to highlight is this interface between the testing company and us is actually quite straightforward. It's all in terms of structured data where we have good ontologies for medications. So the data integration, which can be, in my experience, reasonably complex, in this case is actually quite simple. So having done that, obviously we want to go further. We're currently in talks with third-party payers who are doing population management. I think these talks have really highlighted the extent to which a model, which isn't just a black box prediction, but rather really implies a particular intervention, is of great value. If you want to intervene on falls, telling you, hey, look, these are the top 1% of fall risk patients in your population, is useful to be sure, but it's more useful if we can say, these are the highest risk in terms of their medication, because we're in complete control of which medications our patients take. The risk prediction implies the intervention. And so this isn't the sort of standard fall risk story where you send somebody into the home to install grab bars and tack down throw rugs. This is actually a pharmacy-centric intervention where you take a population pharmacist and have them review those high-risk patients to see if it is possible to actually make within-class exchanges of equal clinical effectiveness, but potentially lower risk. So those are the conversations that are ongoing now. That's where I hope we'll be in about a year. Where are we hoping to go? Well, with the right partner, obviously this started really with a desire for clinical decision support in my clinic, and I hope we can get back there, bringing this into that individual provider clinical decision support. So if we stick with my antidepressant example, here, for example, we have 4 green medications, antidepressants for the sake of argument. If I'm most worried about falls, for say, in an elderly patient, I might use this tool to guide me away from a high fall risk medication or away from a high delirium risk medication to one of those equivalent antidepressants. Finally, where's my lab going? Well, obviously we've got 3, we're working on 2 more. These require human expertise. That human expertise is slow and expensive. I'd really like to get this to a point where we can learn the entire drug burden without reliance on a human expert. Once we do that, it's appealing to imagine stamping out lots more rulers, so going beyond 3, beyond 5, to as many as I can imagine. But I think it's even more exciting to imagine pushing that question of what off-target effects are most important to you, patient. Fill this out in more of a patient-reported outcome paradigm and actually train the model in real time in the context of a clinical decision, or rather the context of a clinical encounter, to provide patient-specific clinical decision support around minimizing that particular patient's adverse effects of greatest concern. So with that, I'll say thank you very much. It's been great to be here, and if somebody has questions, I'll be in the foyer afterwards. Thanks so much.